Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Munoz. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I interview a wonderful Black woman every single day for 29 straight days. And today, I am super excited to have Kenice Mobley, who is a comedian. She has an incredible story, and I can't wait for you all to listen. Hey, Kenice, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. It's a chilly day in New York, and we are doing our best.
Yeah, listen, it's not snowing, so it could be worse.
True. Today it is not. 2 days ago, yes. In the future, who knows? But today it is not snowing. The sun has been intermittently shining, and we're all doing our best.
All we can ask for. So, first question, always the same. Answers always amazing. Yours, I doubt, will be any different. So, Kenice, what was your first job?
So my first job technically was working for my mom. She was a contractor in IT and computer stuff in the 90s, and I had to air quotes work for her, which meant doing my chores around the house and like throwing away old documents. So that was my first job technically because it paid me a very, very small amount. My first job in the real world was at a Jack in the Box where I went in, had an interview, and they said, haha, actually, you're working at a different Jack in the Box. So I had to commute to work at Jack in the Box in high school. Then I was in a car accident and I couldn't go into work. And by the time I called back, they were like, sorry, management's changed and we have no record of you. So I had to get a different job after that.
That's a great way to kick off the working career.
Yes.
Uh,
Where, hey, things could change at the drop of a hat, and being flexible is the only way to survive because if you're too rigid, man, this world will tear you down.
it's 110% will. So, we go from that initial job to where we are now. What's that career journey been like?
Okay, so it has been a winding one. I mean, those were my high school jobs. I went to college, majored in history and psychology, worked at the Center for the 3C Center for Childhood Development, did research studies with kids, worked in the Duke lab doing a recreation of the Clark doll study. Then my friends were like, you never talk about psychology, you only talk about movies. Went to go get an MFA at Boston University, worked in film. Through film, I had friends who worked at like Comedy Central, saw comedy for the first time, saw that people could be bad at comedy. I didn't know that. I just saw people on TV doing it, and I was like, oh, these people just come off the top of their head and they know how to do this. But seeing people be bad at comedy, I was like, oh, if you can be bad at it, I could be bad at it. And so I started doing comedy. I worked at a bunch of startups while I was progressing in my career. And then truly the worst time to decide to pursue it full time, February 2020, I decided, oh, okay, I'm going to quit my day job and just do comedy. And I've been able to make it work for the last 5 years.
Wow. So, how does one make a living as a comedian?
So lots of ways, and I'm currently doing several of them. So of course, there's the traditional like performing part where you do shows, you're paid for those shows. Sometimes you travel to headline in a place, sometimes you're doing festivals, that variety of income from there. So lots of small amounts that are part of the income. Then teaching comedy. So I've taught comedy at Pratt University and at various seminars for all kinds of people who want to know how to do comedy. So teaching is part of it. I am a member of SAG, so the Screen Actors Guild, based on my commercial work. So acting in commercials is part of it. And then I also worked with the Center for Media and Social Impact, which looks at how comedy can be used to encourage social justice generally. So that means working in little writers' rooms for different nonprofits to create content that showcases their underlying message. So that as well. In addition to, I'm writing two screenplays at the moment. I finished one and that's like in the second draft, but while I'm in the second draft of that, getting started on another. And yeah, writing and working all the time.
So, do you sleep?
I do, maybe too much. Well, right now I'm truly getting over either the flu or COVID or both. And
Everybody has it right about now.
everyone seems to have it. I see, there's the cough. I did a quiz, like, or a poll on my Instagram to see, like, how many of you guys are currently sick? And it was more than a third of people were like, I am truly in bed right now, being taken out by an illness. So there's something that's getting a lot of us, and we're all managing and trying our best.
I mean, I had walking pneumonia right after the election.
Oh,
Um,
no.
and the weird thing about that is that I didn't have a cough. I didn't have a sore throat. I didn't have a runny nose. I didn't have shortness of breath. All I had was a fever.
Oh,
And
dang.
I
How long
just
did
felt
it last?
about almost 2 weeks. I
Ugh.
didn't even go to the hospital. That was like, and like 6 hours later, because going to the emergency room, don't recommend, 0 stars. They were like, oh, let's do a chest X-ray. Oh yeah, you've got this thing on your lung. That's walking pneumonia. That's what it is.
Oh, that
Mm.
stinks. I'm sorry that you had it, but also happy that you've recovered.
Yes, but what the thing they were saying to me was that like so many people are coming down with walking pneumonia and having it the weird way I did, where it's like I didn't have a cough. I could breathe normally. And so folks that are just sort of like suffering, not realizing that, yep, that's what's making you sick.
Jeez Louise. Well, that stinks. I am coughing, so I don't think it's the same thing, but there's something going on because I'm exhausted all of the time.
Oh man. So obviously being a Black female comedian has got to be a barrel of monkeys. So talk to me about a time when you had a challenge where you're like, there's no way I'm getting through this, and then you did.
Okay, I mean, there's several ways I can answer that. I'm going to start with, so I started stand-up comedy in Boston, and there were more comedians named Sean than there were comedians of color.
I was gonna say like Boston, you can't get, I don't think you can get much wider.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, Boston does have a thriving Black community, but it was not intersecting with like the Cambridge comedy scene. It just wasn't really there. So a lot of people were like, you're too dirty, because I like dirty humor. They were like, you're too dirty. There was a lot of, you're too this, you're too that. And there was no way to really win. But I mean, it sounds like the most basic of answers, but there's a certain amount of like, hey, I know what's funny to me. I know what works in front of audiences when I do it. And while all these people can say, like, you shouldn't be as dirty as this, or you need to be more like this, or you shouldn't talk about race, or you shouldn't talk about these things, if the point of comedy is to communicate ideas in a way, and like your ideas in a way that other people will find humorous, then you kind of have to be yourself. Like some people are pretending to be a character and good on them that they have the ability to do that. But I am only able to be myself on stage. And by doing that, people did notice, like, oh, this person has a perspective that is not like everybody else's. And I was able to rise through the ranks in Boston. And once you rise through the ranks in Boston, there's nowhere else to go. Everybody moves here to New York.
And then you got to New York, and you're like, all right, I survived those crazy white boys. I can do whatever I can do with you all here in New York.
I remember when I first moved here and I was taking the A from like Penn Station or something because I arrived here with two suitcases and I took the A train from like Penn Station to where I was staying out in Bed-Stuy. And there was a certain stop where like most of the white people got off the train. And I was looking around like so excited. And I probably had this dumb grin on my face because I was like, all these black people, like, yay, finally.
Oh my goodness. You went to, it was like you got to Wakanda for like a hot second.
Yes. And I was like, I know they'll have my hair care products around here because in Boston, you had to search because not all the CVS's had it. But here, like if I go to the CVS, I'm like, they have aisles and aisles dedicated to Black people because Black people live here.
It's like they live here, they work here, so
Hmm.
they have to get the stuff in between going from home to the office and back. Like, yeah. Um, I love this. So, okay, we're in a very unique universe currently right now.
Yes.
I think a lot of folks look to comedy as oftentimes the truth tellers about the world that we're in. How has that been for you over the last few months and in the world and in our current circumstances?
Sure, sure, sure. So it is interesting to me because there's a type of comedy that has, I think, become more popular since the pandemic, and I call it black shirt comedy or like black t-shirt comedy. It's people who are like honestly trying to imitate both Louis C.K. and someone they saw go viral on TikTok or something, where it is like what is the most likely to go viral, and that seems to be really pushed as far as like what kind of content is booked, celebrated, all that. That can be a little frustrating as far as a trend because it's a lot of people who started during the pandemic, and everyone's got to start at some time. I'm not saying like, ooh, gross young people. That's rude, and that's not at all what I'm trying to say. But what I am saying is people who are in it for virality versus in it to communicate ideas and write jokes. And I've seen that trend happen. I've also seen those people perform and not do very well on stage because that is not their primary mode of communication. It's online, and in person, it's a little bit worse. I've also seen that train audiences to talk more and try to interact more so that they can be part of the viral moment. I have really appreciated shows where they kind of train the audience not to do that, where they train the audience to listen to jokes and expect jokes. For the political climate that's happening at this moment, uh, I don't talk a ton about straight politics except through the prism of an awkward situation. So after the election, when you were having walking pneumonia, which I'm sorry that again that you had that, I started telling jokes about reaching out to lovers from other countries and being like, yo, do you have a spare room so that if shit goes sideways here, that I can go live somewhere else?
I think that works. It
People laugh because I list out other countries and like people who I dated who are from places that maybe aren't more peaceful than here, and just being like, okay, not this guy, not this guy. Okay, this guy. This guy seems like it's a pretty stable thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
like the
could I
fat
have
Russian dude,
Australia?
not so much, but the guy from Sweden, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it makes sense, makes sense. Well, that's interesting. So, because so your side of the universe is, and I would agree with you. I am so tired of seeing these TikTok comedians
Uh-huh.
because you're not funny. I hate I mean I hate to be I am not an arbiter and or a judge of comedy, but I do know what makes me laugh, and I have a pretty wide sense of humor, and I'm often like, this is team try too hard. And
Yeah.
you're right, like they're trying to be Louis C.K. And I'm like, that works for a certain genre of people. Good luck to you.
Yes. And yeah, similarly, it's like, hey, I understand that you saw this as a way of getting more followers. This is kind of its own ecosystem, but that is decidedly different than writing jokes, making albums, like it being able to entertain a room full of people for an hour and a half. That's like a different skill, and one shouldn't be used to gauge the other. Also, this is old person, Kenice, old man yells at cloud. I get it. But like if you don't have much to say, which often you don't when you're 22 years old because you just haven't had the life experience, what you're talking about will tend to fall into what you've seen before and not necessarily represent a creative or writerly impulse.
But that's the thing, because like y'all haven't lived. It's like
Yeah.
you really haven't seen anything, and it's kind of like with the TikTok dances. The same thing, like they don't work because like you're not dancing with anybody else. You're just dancing for tripod, so no one can tell you your dance moves are terrible. It's kind of the same thing
Yeah.
with like it's also why like when you see these like a lot of these white girls doing these black hip hop dances, you're like yeah, you're on one and four. You're not even on one and three. You're supposed to be on one and twos.
It's surprising how I memorized a series of steps, they think that means that I can dance. Similarly, like I stood on stage and I said things where it's like I indicated this is a punchline, and sometimes they are surprised when that doesn't work, and I find that interesting. Like I'll be on a show and it'll be me who definitely didn't come up through social media, and it'll be some often younger, but sometimes not, comedians, and they are surprised when the audience does not react to them just being like, I made a weird face, and it's like I hope for the best for you, but I do encourage you to work less on being a persona and more on being a comedian and writing and figuring out how you navigate a crowd and how you can do that the best.
Yeah, just do the thing. But also, there's a 10,000 hours thing.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't kind of a joke. It is actually real. And I wish more people would understand the importance of like practice, repetition, and but also life experience. Like go out and live. If you've like never,
Yes.
do you know how to make toast? Have you ever warmed up a Pop-Tart? Like I don't, I'm always amazed. Like I said, I've managed lots of different people and I've been in corporate for a while. And, the thing that always similarly gonna sound like old man yells at cloud because I'm like, have y'all not gone outside?
Yeah.
Like,
It's
figure stuff out, been out there like unless you've been somewhere like 2 o'clock in the morning and be like, I have no money, I don't know how I'm gonna go home. I mean, I can figure something out. Or,
yeah.
or just like, this is weird dude talking to me. How do I get out of this? Like nothing. Like it,
Isn't it so nice to have been able to live a life that gave us the experiences to be like, I don't want to talk to you. Or like, I know how to navigate this. If shit goes wrong, I can figure it out because I have experience in figuring shit out.
well, it gives you one, it gives you different perspective. Two, it gives you an
Hmm.
opportunity to, think on your feet. And I think, similarly with these comedians, if like a joke fails because they haven't, they have the thing they've memorized for this in their 5 minutes, if something goes left, they're like, wait, where do I go?
Yeah. And I mean, I think when I was like 2 years in, that would totally throw me and I wouldn't be able to recover. But now it is based on experience. I have all these tools in my toolkit. So if one joke doesn't land, I can shift. I have enough jokes that I can definitely do additional material, but I can just interact with the audience in a different way to create a positive experience for everyone. So even if it's not what I planned on saying from the like when I got on stage, I can change it up. Everyone leaves with a nice thing, and I don't feel like crap, which is how it feels when you do poorly in comedy. You just feel like, oh man, everyone hates me. That's what it feels like.
Right. So now we're talking about younger folks. So what advice would you give to 18-year-old Kenice?
18-year-old Kenice. So when I was 18, I was in a mostly white high school dating a guy who was a Republican, or he said he's fiscally conservative but socially liberal, which isn't a thing. I was in the South, and there was very few paths that I felt like I could go on. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm kind of smart, so I'll go get PhD in something maybe. And like the best way that I could see to do some of the things that interested me, I was like, I guess I could be like a professor or something because I had seen that in movies. Now, me currently, I would tell myself, hey, there's so many other avenues that you can pursue. It doesn't just have to be what you've seen before. And also, don't limit yourself based on what the environment around you tells you. Because I didn't even know people like, I thought being a comedian was something that you had to be born naturally talented at, and often maybe had to like grow up in Hollywood or something like that. But there's so many ways of being creative or like looking into things that interest you, and you don't have to just put your nose to the grindstone and stress yourself out constantly and try to impress people who, based on virtue of who you are, you're never going to impress. That's totally fine, and that's them. That's not you. And you shouldn't put all that on your back and try to impress people who honestly don't want you around. So pursue your interest, find the ways that you can pursue your interest, try new things. You're still learning. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Sorry that was a bit of a rant, but I'm thinking about 18-year-old me and I'm like, wow, you were stressed out and you should have been enjoying yourself and figuring out what you like to do.
I like that one. But it's also is true. I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and, and there is this thing like, you have to have life figured out by the time you graduate college. Like, no, you don't.
Yeah, you don't at all. It's fine. And honestly, maybe in a couple of instances, people benefited from having it all figured out in college, but now I'm 39 and it's like no one has a medal for having it figured out when they were 18 or 22. Like we're all just here trying our best.
Yeah, because even whatever plan you had, there's no universe where like world events have affected what you did. Like
Exactly.
the global pandemic that affected everyone. So that even if you had a perfect life up until 2020, it got rocked in
Yes.
2020, and you're not the same. So, and that's separate before, like, I'm a elder millennial, so I lived through 9/11, the financial collapse, Hurricane Sandy, another financial collapse, and all this other madness.
Yeah.
You know, all those things deviate you from the path that you thought you would be on. So, and
Mhm.
that's okay. Like, folks don't have to have the world sorted out that quickly. And if you did, you're so lame
Yeah.
because you don't.
Imagine not changing at all after having experienced all those things that you couldn't have predicted, nor can you as an individual shape or change considerably. Like, don't get me wrong, we all can affect the world that we live in certain ways. But yeah, I couldn't have in ninth grade stopped 9/11. I couldn't have done it. And it affected me.
Precisely. There's no way around it. Literally no way
Yeah.
around it. It's fascinating to me, and my hope is that, like, again, hearing the stories from folks who do part of 29 Days of Magic is to understand that, like, nobody has it figured out, and no one has a straight line path. Every I'm 150 interviews into this one part of this podcast, this series,
Uh-huh.
and no one has said, you know what I did? I graduated college, I went to become a lawyer, and I'm still a lawyer, and I've done nothing else. No one
Yeah.
has that.
And even there are some people who did go to law school and they are still lawyers, but it's not like their life was like easy sailing. Like stuff happened, they had to move, they had to change jobs. The thing that they were planning on actually didn't come to fruition or ceased to exist. So you just have to roll with it. Like I was working at Comedy Central. I was really excited about it, but Comedy Central, which was under Viacom, was acquired by Paramount. They cut their entire social team and I was on the social team. So even though I had been working hard and my contracts had been extended and it seemed like, oh man, I have a solid job in this one thing, sometimes that thing just stops existing and you have to figure out what you're going to do next.
It is life, and that's okay. It's gonna
It's
go all
fine.
it's all gonna all praise. Speaking of, like, it's gonna be fine, what do you do for your self-care?
So, in addition to taking naps, because I'm a sleepy lady, I love cooking. I love being like, okay, like this is a small thing, but I wanted cookies. I didn't want to go to the store and buy cookies. And I was like, okay, what ingredients do I have? I could make these sugar cookies, but these sugar cookies that they're describing seem a little plain. So I'm going to add this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a pinch of salt. And it was like, what resulted were these cookies that I really liked. It sated my craving for cookies, but also now it's like a skill that I have with making this type of cookies quickly and easily. But I make tiramisu, I make macaroons, I make like I call it dirty rice because that's what they call it at Bojangles, but it's just like rice with all these like vegetables and herbs and spices in it, and I love it. And I just love cooking up a big pot of something and being like, I accomplished that. So cooking is part of my self-care. Straightening up around my house is part of my self-care. I worked really hard to be able to live by myself during the pandemic. at the beginning, I lived with two other people. And I was like, I think I might commit murder if I stay in this apartment with these people. So I moved out. I have my own place, and I love picking a drawer or a part of a closet and going through and being like, you don't need this anymore. Get rid of it. You don't need this anymore. Give it to someone else. This is well past expired. Throw it away. So I like that process of getting rid of the junk in my home.
I love this. And I love the cooking. The cooking sound amazing too. Like whatever you want to make, I'm down for it.
Okay, cool.
Because we're gonna have to eventually meet now. We have to. There's no choice
I would
around it.
like that.
Well, we're both in New York and we're not that far. So thinking about all the great advice you've given already, do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
Sure. I'd say A, listen to comedy, listen to podcasts, go see live comedy. Take a chance and don't just see people that you've seen on TV a bunch. And what I mean by that is like Dave Chappelle will do like Madison Square Garden or something like that. And while, yes, you have the right, if that is someone that you like, you can spend $300 on seats for that. But also consider instead of spending $300 on one ticket, $30 on 10 tickets where you can see people who live in your community, see people who are at an earlier stage in their career, and just get a variety of types of comedy. I think it's important to not just go with the name that you heard of. And in some ways, that's like buying a ticket, like a concert ticket to a band that you haven't heard. But if that band is similar to bands that you like, it's worth the risk of going and seeing and maybe discovering your new favorite band. So similarly, I think it's worth the risk of going and seeing comedians that could be your favorite comedians that you can see around town, that you can know about before they're popular or whatever. I just say take a chance on some people who aren't already household names.
I love that. And now it's also true. And some of my best, I went to NYU, and so I remember we used to go to the cellar down by NYU, and we would go see all these hilarious comedians, and like they were just on and up and up and up, and does make you laugh.
Yeah.
Because honestly, laughter is by far the best medicine, especially in these crazy, chaotic times.
100%. Like, don't get me wrong. I think medicine is a great medicine. And I wish that more people had access to it and the standard of care, our life expectancy is all lower than in other industrialized countries because, damn it, we need medicine. But you don't need it every day. And sometimes you need medicine for the soul, and laughter can be that. So I say, hey, come on. There's truly, because I've traveled the country, I know there's comedy everywhere. So if you live in, sorry, bumfuck Montana, there's comedy there and you should go check it out.
Amen. Last question for you.
Yes.
What's one thing that brings you joy?
Okay, so many things bring me joy. Sometimes it is taking an edible and eating a pint of the Tonight Dough by Ben and Jerry's. Sometimes it's as simple as that, where it's like I've had a long week, I get to give myself a treat. But oftentimes it is talking to my sister and making fun of things. I have an identical twin sister. We're very close. And just we will make fun of a movie we watched, a podcast we were listening to, or just a situation. So it's very, very silly. But sometimes out of nowhere, one of us will say, no, you calm down. And it always makes us crack up because it's apropos of nothing. And you always, for a moment, say, am I being like extra hype? No. And so we'll just start shouting that back and forth at each other while we're on the phone with each other in like the middle of a Target. Well, not Target now because we're boycotting, but it's just like this fun thing that we do that I love. And it brings me so much joy.
Oh my God. That is amazing. I love that. I also love that you're an identical twin, which is crazy.
It's
Um,
great. We have had periods of time when we were closer and not as close, but right now it's like, oh, I guess I was really lucky in that my best friend happened to be in the womb with me and has known me since before I was born. So I feel really lucky about that.
That's pretty amazing and so very cool. Kenice, you're just, oh my God, you made me laugh so hard, but also just really great advice that you shared. And, again, this is part of the reason I'm just doing this series to like, again, highlight these voices that folks may not have heard before, because we all have such beautiful stories and wonderful and hilarious stories to tell. So I'm going to put all details in the show notes for folks to find out where your next performance is. I'm going to come see
Thank
you
you.
perform, because we support Black women here.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being part of 29 Days of Magic.
Thank you. And then just so I know, when is this airing so I can promote a show that I have coming up with the Black Women in Comedy Festival?
When is the show?
So it is my solo show. It's called Don't Kill Yourself Yet. It's about struggling my whole life with depression, only for my body to try to kill me with a stroke. It is a comedy. Sometimes that sounds like it's not a comedy. It's a comedy.
Okay.
Um, it is called, yeah, Don't Kill Yourself Yet, and it is at Caveat on February 27th.
Yeah, this will be up before February 27th.
Okay, then I
Okay.
want to promote that, and man, oh man, I hope people come to it because it is fun.
Cool. Where's it gonna be?
It's at Caveat in Lower Manhattan. I should know neighborhoods better. Lower? That's so messed up. I lived in New York for 8 years, and I'm like, I don't know. It's before streets have numbers, so whatever part of town that is.
So downtown Manhattan is what you're saying.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll get all those details and put it in, and then we'll also plug it and when we post this up for you.
Thank you so much.
And that is our show.